Good evening to everyone present here. I, Lubna, from the Corporate Engagement Committee, am honored to be your host for the event, along with Ashwati, my co-host. We, the Corporate Engagement Committee, bring to you the second conversation of the current academic year under Careers and Conversations, an elite and exclusive platform to rendezvous with eminent speakers from different walks of life, reminiscing about their personal and professional voyages. This platform aims to provide ample learning opportunities through real-life stories to faculty, students, and alumni alike. Today, we ponder on the topic of leading with purpose with Mr. Mainak Dhar. I would now request my co-host Ashwati to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Lubna. Today, on the second conversation of this academic year, it is my privilege to introduce our distinguished guest, Mr. Mainak Dhar. An alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad, Mr. Dhar brings over 28 years of leadership experience in blue-chip consumer product multinationals. He began his career with 18 years at Procter & Gamble across Asia Pacific, followed by over a decade as a CEO at General Mills and Kimberly-Clark, and now serves as a managing director of McCain Foods India. Beyond his corporate achievements, Mr. Dhar is also a best-selling author of more than 20 books, a certified life coach, and the founder of mentoringbymainak.com, an AI-enabled platform that has mentored thousands worldwide. He is also a black belt in karate, embodying values of discipline, humility, and continuous improvement. Above all, he treasures his roles as a husband and a father. Please join me in welcoming a dynamic leader, mentor, and change maker, Mr. Mainak Dhar. Before we proceed further, I would like to invite our director, Dr. Raman Ramachandran, to felicitate our guest. This shawl is from Somaya Kalavidya and it is hand-woven by artisans from Kutch. I would now like to request Raman sir to address the audience.
Thank you. I don't want to spend much time and stand between this very inspirational person we have on the dais and all of you. Maybe just to add to what both of them said, a few words about careers and conversation, particularly for the benefit of Mainak, but also for all the new students here. So this particular series, today actually Mainak is the 19th person here on this stage doing the careers and conversation. And the whole idea of careers and conversations evolved in a dialogue between few of us, where the central theme of what makes a successful career, quote unquote, right? I mean, people who reach a certain level of leadership. And it's very clear that it's not just a degree, an MBA from IIM or an MBA from a marquee business school, that definitely increases the probability, but that necessarily is not the only element. Along the career, there are lots of decisions that you take, lots of decisions that you don't take, a lot of attributes that you have, which eventually, and the things that you do as an individual, and you heard, like some of the achievements and some of the things that Mainak does, which is beautifully balancing the family life with his passion for writing, with, I didn't know you were actually a black belt in judo, but karate, but yeah, so he seems to be able to balance a number of things very well. So the ability to do some of these things, so there are several elements that go towards making a successful career, and more importantly, a very contented kind of career and life. And that's the whole purpose. And we said, what better way than bring people who have lived it and have a conversation with them so that you can actually kind of understand. So some of this will be very theoretical for you, but as you get into the career, I'm sure if you attend a few of these, and actually for Mainak, we have something called Student Progression Index. We don't judge them only on their CGPA of what they get in the classroom. There are 6 other elements that are graded, and there is a student progression, and one of them is attending this careers and conversation, which has got 5 marks out of 100. So as you go, there could be this flashlight that comes along 5 years later. I heard Mainak talk about this, and I'm in the crossroads where I have to take a decision. Maybe I can kind of remember what was discussed at that time, and that might help me to take the decision. So that's the whole purpose of this. So enjoy, really soak up the words of wisdom that we're going to hear for the next hour like a sponge, and store it away somewhere, and I'm sure it'll come to help you sometime in your career. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, sir. The conversation will be led by Mr. Arun Thakral, our Corporate Engagement Committee faculty head, and who is a professor also in Practice and Finance and lead Corporate Relations at KJSIM Institute of Management. Now, I would like to hand over the stage to Arun sir to begin our session on careers and conversations, whose theme is Leading with Purpose.
Thank you, Lubna, and welcome Mainak once again. So let me first congratulate you for completing 1 year at McCain. I think you joined in last August, so you have completed 1 year. And that is the latest chapter in your 28-year working life, starting with Procter & Gamble, then General Mills, Kimberly-Clark, and now McCain. So we'll discuss what you did in all these firms. But what we normally do here, we start with the beginning. So maybe you have to rewind. How did it all started? Your early days, your schooling, which location you studied, one school or many school. So start with that.
Sure. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me clearly? So first of all, thank you all for having me here. The only place where I would differ, sir, is I don't profess to have any wisdom to offer. But I think sometimes we just learn by hearing each other's stories. All of us have our own stories. Every single one of you has your story. I'm sure I can learn something from your stories, and maybe you'll pick up something from mine. So my story, if you ask about where it all began, I was born in Nagaland, and then lived in Sikkim, then Delhi, then moved to Canada for a few years. My father was in the government, so growing up was a fairly nomadic experience. Went to 10 different schools, and I think that experience shaped me in many different ways. One is at a very early age, because we were moving around so much, I got really interested in reading, and that in turn got me interested in telling my own stories. Second thing I think is that taught me a lot about adapting to new situations, new people, new cultures. Taught me the importance of family, because when you move around so much, really your family is the one constant you have. So I'd say my early experiences in many ways shaped the core of who I am.
Yeah, and I remember when you said Canada, so I watched some of your videos in the last 1 week. So there was something on ice skating.
Yes.
So can you narrate that for?
No. We moved to Canada in 1983. We moved in October. So I had lived in Sikkim, but I was very young when I had lived in Sikkim. So we moved there when I was 9 years old. Winter set in. Obviously there was a lot of snow, which was fun till you're seeing it from the outside. And then came the whole idea of ice skating. And that was an interesting experience, because I had no idea how to ice skate. So I used to keep falling, and I used to feel like a fool. And I still remember, it was really interesting, my mother, who I would say, all of us have our own gurus. She was probably my guru. She said, "Chalo, we'll do it together, don't worry." And she held my hand, and she also fell, and I also fell. But that kind of took the whole fear out of it. And now that I look back so many years, that was really powerful, because sometimes the best thing you can do to help someone else is take that fear out of falling. By saying that you're also in the same situation with them, you're not ashamed to fall with them. So that was just an interesting anecdote from my childhood, which I think left a big imprint on my mind.
Yeah, and then we will relate it with your son.
Yeah.
You are doing the same thing again, but I will come to that.
Yeah.
So with your background in consumer healthcare, then restaurant business, now food. So how do the FMCG leaders balance innovation with affordability? And in a cluttered frozen food market, how you stay at the top of the mind?
Yeah.
What are the campaigns you do? And last but not the least, now Gen Z being more health conscious and millennials and all.
Yeah.
So how do you handle that without changing your signature taste?
Absolutely. See, I think the core of it, if you ask me, whether it's many things you mentioned, innovation, being top of mind, changing tastes, I think the core of it, if anyone wants to be successful in the consumer product spaces, you have to really focus on your consumer. And I don't know if at the risk of telling another story, the reason I got into this sector has nothing to do with an intellectual assessment of where are there better prospects. I mean, when I was in, how many of you are in first year of your MBAs? A lot of you, right? So when I was in your shoes, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. Okay, I did college, appeared for CAT, got into an MBA school. I had no idea. If somebody asked me in first year, what do you want to do? I have no idea. I did my summer internship with Unilever. And I still remember I was in the foods business, and then I began my career in beauty care, but I was in food, so I was an intern. So I used to literally heat seal samples and go give it to consumers and get their feedback. And I still remember the first time I went to a consumer in home, there was a nice auntie, and I was obviously dressed formally in a shirt and all, and I went there asking her, आप इस मसाले से क्या बनाते हो? And after a while she said, तुम तो अच्छे घर के लगते हो, तो तुम घर घर जाके लोगों को पूछते हो क्या कैसे खाना बनाते हैं? And I just remember having so much fun, because many of my friends and classmates, and this was I graduated in '96, so that was when a lot of the big consulting firms, investment banks were coming in. Those started becoming the so-called hot jobs. But I just realized I have so much fun doing this because it's real. You're working on something that will become a part of someone's life, that will become a part of someone's family. And then with all the idealism, misplaced idealism maybe that comes with being young, I said, oh, this is what I want to do in my life. So I still remember those days we didn't have mobile phones, our dorm had this landline, so I called my father and he said, placements are coming. I said, no, I'm applying only to P&G and Unilever, that's it. And he said, in Bengali, he said, kothayo chakri na hole ki korbe? If you don't get a job, what are you going to do? I said, no, this is what I want to do with my life. So that joy is what's kept me going 28 years. And I think the clarity that comes with it is, whether it's innovation, whether it's brand building, whether it's campaigns, changing, see, all of those become a means to an end. Ultimately, it starts and ends with understanding your consumer, understanding where the consumer is heading, appreciating the fact that there is no one consumer. When you look at a market like India, right, there is no one stereotypical consumer. There will always be some consumers who want more innovation, there will be some consumers who want more affordability, there will be some consumers who want a bit more health. And to be honest, the same human being, you and me, there are occasions when we want to indulge a bit, there are occasions when we don't. And I think it all stems from, if you have that clarity that ultimately you exist to serve that consumer, all of these are different ideas in your toolkit to serve the consumer. So there is actually no dilemma. If one stays focused on understanding where the consumer is headed, the fact that who are the different groups of consumers, how best can you serve them at different times. So that's kind of how I think of it in a very simplistic way.
I think you regularly mention the customer is the only true obsession I have.
Of course.
And the serving part is again highlighted in every talk which I have seen. Wonderful. So coming to the digital part of it, no discussion is complete if you don't discuss digital transformation.
Yeah.
So we always talk about transformation all the time. So how do you now, with the help of AI, machine learning, how that is affecting in your strategies and when you are addressing the customer?
See, I'm not a very theoretical person, so I'll give you answers based on what I've seen. If I look at 28 years ago when I began my career as an assistant brand manager to today, the reality is the fundamentals don't change. You have to understand your consumer, you have to understand what it takes to serve them, you have to show up when they're receptive, you have to have the right value equation. The fundamentals do not change. And I think one of the things that we need to be wary of is mistake digital tactics for strategy. And that's what I think often happens. People will say, oh no, it's all about digital. It's ultimately about serving that consumer. Those fundamentals haven't changed. I think what has changed, which I think is a huge positive change, is I think digital fundamentally allows us to do two things. One is it allows us to really personalize at scale. That was not possible all those years ago. I mean, when I began my career, the epitome of marketing was, I've got a TV campaign out. and I've got a print campaign out. And how do I know about how consumers feel about it? Maybe I'll do a day after recall. A marketer today who's running a digital campaign on Amazon or Instagram, you get almost real-time data on which cohort likes me, why, what behaviors are they exhibiting. So I think that's a really, in a way, that aspect of digital has made marketing purer than it was. Because, 3 decades ago, marketing was a shotgun approach. I think now you truly get a chance to serve the consumer in a much more individualized way. I think the second thing that it's really enabling is much faster decision making, which I think is also really positive, because ultimately the consumer is not waiting for a 3-month track. The consumer is making decisions every single day. And I think what digital fundamentally allows also is much faster decision making. So I was walking back, I found it fascinating. You have this BARC Media Lab, which is an amazing resource you guys have. When I began my career, our media plan was done on pieces of paper. We would write it down. And we used to go and tell the media department, is program mein itne slots kharido. And I think that's what it allows, much faster decision making, which is great. Because it kind of shortens the cycle time between marketers putting something out there, getting consumer feedback, reacting to it. So those are, I think, the big positives.
Yeah. So you talked about personalization or hyper-personalization.
Oh, sorry. Yes, yes.
So when you talk about this, and you relate it to the storytelling.
Yes.
And because that again becomes a very, very important part. And as you said that you don't believe in 4x4 metrics. That's what I think you normally say. And you believe in relationships. So how does this add up?
No, I think the core of marketing, if you think of it is a relationship between the brand and the consumer. All of us think we are very important people. We are just intermediaries. We are just helping build that relationship. And that's the core of it. If you think of any iconic brand, it's been, and the fundamentals are the same. When you form a relationship with a human being, who you decide to date, who you decide to marry, who you decide to become friends with, you don't make a spreadsheet and assess attributes. It's a much more emotional decision. Yeah, there are some basic necessary conditions, but a lot of it is based on, is there a match of values? Do you share certain common purpose? Do you want to hang out with that person? It's the same with brands. And I think those same principles are incredible. That's the art of marketing. The science of marketing is all the frameworks, and both are important. But I think ultimately to really create iconic brands, to really be a strong marketer, it's combining that art and science. And that's where really thinking of it as a relationship really helps.
Yeah, fascinating. So I'll come to brand and I'll talk about your 2 books, Brand Shastra and Brand New Start.
Sure.
But before that, let me stay on AI.
Sure.
So you are leveraging AI obviously at your company, and you are also leveraging AI on your platform, Mentoring by Mainak. Just tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I would say I did not start by saying I want to leverage AI. And I think, AI is a tool. Everything is a tool. And I think any tool gets purpose and life based on why you're using it. So to some extent, I was always, I would say, very passionate about mentoring. I've been lucky to have had a number of great mentors in my life whom I have benefited from. But where I think a light bulb went off in my mind was during COVID. Because I used to see all around us, we were all in lockdown at the time, people getting laid off, young people having their offers rescinded, so much uncertainty around. And I put something out on LinkedIn, which I honestly didn't know what it would lead to. I said, look, if anybody needs help, just reach out to me. And within a couple of weeks, I had more than 70 young people reach out. And I was soon chatting to them, and it was amazing that somebody just wanted help on finessing the CV. Somebody was going for an interview and wanted some advice. Somebody wanted to think about, should I do job A or job B? And in chatting with all these, and almost all of them were in their 20s. They were young people. And it suddenly struck me that there are so many people out there who don't have access to mentors. And that really struck me as a big gap. So that led me to start writing on LinkedIn, led me to write this book called Brand New Start. And then over time I realized, look, there's only so much I can scale personally. I'm a human being. You may think I have a lot of time, but there are limits to what I can do. And that's why as I learned more about AI and machine learning, I said, look, can I provide that mentoring even when I'm not there with an authentic voice? So that's when I, just to prove that you can teach an old dog new tricks, learned a bit about AI, and try to get a machine learning model using a lot of my books, articles, keep refining it. So every Saturday I'll go and look at what questions are being asked, keep refining answers. So now mentoring by Mainak has completed just over a year, and that's been really great.
That's great. And you specifically talked about the mentoring gap, and in your platform it is written. So I read that, and I think we share a very common passion about that, and we discussed. And I'm very happy that you told that mentoring is not about giving the gyan. You actually look at their CV, correct that. You do some small thing, and it's not like only ideas and big ideas. So maybe just tell us more about that, because that is what I think our audience would love to hear.
Fundamentally, the first is the mentoring gap that you mentioned. So when I started on this, I'm a marketer at heart, and I said, look, let me first understand what's the need gap. And I did a survey among more than 300 people on LinkedIn, just trying to understand how do people experience mentoring. So the first thing I found is young people who have a mentor reported significantly higher levels of satisfaction in their career or jobs. They felt like they were learning. At the same time, more than half the people didn't have a mentor. And a lot of them felt they didn't have a mentor because they didn't have the right network. So it was a bit self-fulfilling. People with mentors were people who belonged to certain networks, had worked in certain companies, or people who had reached a certain level of seniority. Because then you feel like you have relationships with senior people. Whereas people who most need mentoring are probably people who are starting out in their careers, who don't have established networks. So that's where I thought of there's a big mentoring gap. The second thing is, the concept of mentoring. Unfortunately, a lot of people think of mentoring as being a very transactional thing. So very often a young person will reach out and say, sir, I want mentoring. And when all they want is a job reference, and nothing wrong with it. But that's not mentoring. Mentoring is a relationship where you are fundamentally getting to know a person for who they are, and not give them the answers, but really sometimes help them discover the questions to ask. And those are some of the best mentors I have had. They don't tell you the answers, because the worst thing you can do sometimes is bias a person based on your own preconception. All of us are humans. All of us have our blind spots. All of us have our biases. But the best mentors I have had, and I think the best form of mentoring is, you're probably familiar with the Socratic method, where you're just asking questions. Have you thought of this? Have you asked this question? Have you asked this question? Where sometimes, the answer is within you. But sometimes you just need someone to have that, I would say, conversation without agenda, without a transactional agenda, where you can think through issues, ask the right questions, and maybe
you can wear a coach hat that time.
Yes,
so that let them find their own answers.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. So coming to your two brand book, the Brand Shastra, where you said ki whatever a marketer is doing, why can't you do it for yourself? And there you spoke about the moment of truth, your zero moment of truth, first moment of truth, second moment of truth, and that was quite fascinating. I would request you to talk about that.
Yeah, so the whole concept of Brand Shastra was based on the fact that we sometimes, even as professional marketers also, and all of you are students of business, we think of work and marketing and corporate life as one bucket.
Correct.
And our non-work lives as a completely different bucket. Reality is we're all human beings and they all interact. And ultimately, what is marketing? Marketing is not ads, campaigns, innovation. Marketing fundamentally at its core is understanding people. That's what marketing is. If you want to be a good marketer, that's fundamentally what you need to be. You need to be curious about people, understand their motivations, understand what makes them tick. That, by the way, is the same quality you need to be successful in your daily life, whether it's about building relationships, whether it's about making yourself better. So the whole idea of Brand Shastra is, what are the principles of marketing that we could use in our daily lives to have a better relationship? Even stuff like sticking to your resolutions. I mean, every new year people make resolutions. The most common one being, what do you think the most common resolution is? Lose weight, get rid of bad habits, right? But then what can you learn from marketing concepts around habit change and apply that to your personal life? So that was the whole premise of Brand Shastra.
Yeah, and coming to the brand new start, where you talked about the personal brand, how to build a brand, and there also you said brand is an extension of who you are.
Absolutely.
And maybe you spoke out so many other things like the stakeholders, the kind of thoughts you have, the kind of progress you make, habit change, all those things. So maybe
No, absolutely. So brand new start really was sparked by some of the mentoring conversations I was having where, one thing that struck me is for a lot of young people, when you ask them what's going to make you successful in your career, the first thing they'll say is, I've studied in X campus. Great, good for you. I've got so many marks. Good for you. I've done an internship in X. So basically, you are just a collection of labels and tags, right? And so the whole idea was, look, that's not going to make you successful. Let's be honest. If all you are is a collection of report cards and degrees and brand names, I'm sorry, you're going to get disappointed at some point in life because people don't hire that. People hire you as a person. So the whole idea was what else is needed to succeed, and really taking an analogy of what makes a brand succeed, which is not just the product, it's does a brand have a certain purpose. The whole idea of, you talked about necessary and sufficient conditions. There are some points of parity you need. A detergent has to clean. But why do you then choose different brands? What's your differentiation? How are you truly differentiating yourself? And then the moments of truth.
I think that's what I wanted to remind you, that the zero moment of truth, first and second.
Yes.
And when you, before you go, once you go, and then the results. And maybe you look at in totality and then decide.
Absolutely.
That's great. And coming to your different genres, you started with fiction. You had this Sniper Eye and 0302, and then you are sold these rights to, maybe we'll see some web series or movie coming soon. And then you shifted to the leadership genre. So what was the trigger?
No, for me it's less a shift. To be absolutely honest, I don't have a very carefully plotted, planned thing of I will write this, and I'm quite simple. I write about things I'm passionate about. And there are two broad themes I write about. I write fiction, most of which are thrillers, where a lot of things get blown up and that's meant to entertain. But the deeper story behind it is I come from a family that's served the nation. My grandfather was a freedom fighter, and then when India became, he spent some time in jail, and when India became independent, he was among the first batch of IPS officers of independent India. My father was a police officer and he served the country for over 30 years, and it's timely, tomorrow is August 15th. And part of why I write those thrillers is to pay homage to people like them and others who serve our nation and humanize them. When you look at popular culture, you often see caricatures. The real heroes are people who have families, who have their own fears, who have their own concerns, and yet they go and serve the nation. So that's something which is the broad underlying theme of my thrillers. And I also write books about leadership and personal growth because that's something I'm passionate about. That's something I see around me. Things that are on my mind. So my first novel was a book called The Funda of Mixology, which one would argue was it a novel or a self-help book, which was about a young executive trying to grapple with following his dreams versus what he thinks he needs to do professionally, which is something I felt at that time. I was in my mid-20s, which I think a lot of young people do feel. So those are the two broad themes I write on.
Yeah, and your leadership in 100 words, this is, and that you started because you got inspired by LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And you said that after that, I think there are 3 million views already.
Yeah.
So congratulations, you're doing great job. Now coming to your son's story of this black belt, you were getting black belt in his class.
Yes.
How it happened?
No, so it happened by accident. So I used to learn karate when I was young in school and college, got to a brown belt. And then as it happens, right, I am human, I gave it up, started
So you had a
working.
brown belt
I had
earlier?
a brown belt in college.
And now you got a black belt.
Yes.
And your son motivated you.
Yeah, so I'll tell you the story. So then, of course, like as happens, right? I'm only human, so you may think I do everything, but I'm human. So started working, lost touch with it. Then this was back in 2014. We moved back to Mumbai, and there was a karate dojo near our place. So we were just walking by it, and my son said, "Daddy, can I learn karate?" He was 6 years old at the time. I said, "Of course." So we went up and we met the sensei, and we enrolled him in the class. And like all kids, he was bragging, and he was saying, "My daddy was a brown belt." And the sensei said, "Why don't you learn?" And I said, "I'm like 40 years old. Am I really going to learn?" He says, "No, you must learn. You can't give it up. You must learn. But I have one condition." And I said, "What?" He said, "You must start all the way back from being a white belt."
Oh.
So, but that experience over the last 10 years has been one of the most amazing experiences of my life. Karate is almost incidental, the most magical part of that experience is being a 40-year-old, joining a class with my son, among other students, the oldest of whom was less than half my age. Because it's just amazing. And that's why I was telling in the library earlier, I get so much energy by being around young people. Because, in that context, I am not uncle, I am not dad, I am a fellow student.
Correct.
And there were kids 15 or 16 years old who were my seniors. I bow to them because they were black belts at the time. And that taught me so much about humility, about a learning mindset, about really taking away some of these tags, or you often hear, oh, this generation, the older generation. We can learn so much from each other. And then, along the way, both my son and I have got our black belts. I worked my way back up all the way from white belt, and that's been a really fun experience.
So he feels so proud of you.
I'm sorry?
He feels so proud of you. Okay. So coming back, I left one question which I remember now about the social media policy, like in the personal branding. So you talk about the difference between narcissism and what you are.
Yeah.
So can you please tell us?
I mean, this is my personal point of view.
Yeah, but we would love to hear.
I'm
We
no
would-
one to profess what is right or wrong. My belief is, social media should not be just to express narcissism or tell people how great you are or how successful you are. Ultimately, I believe the best you can be in however you come across is just being authentic. And I think the only reason I like posting on social media is if I have genuinely something on my mind. And I would not hesitate to tell that to somebody on their face if they were in front of me, because I have found something, I have learned something, I have a view on something. I think the danger I see of social media is A, the anonymity of social media, and secondly, the narcissism, is that I can say anything I want, and it's all to paint myself as being better. So my view on it is just be authentic. That's the best you can be no matter what you do. Whether on social media or in face-to-face interactions or at the workplace, that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah. So maybe I have only one or two more questions.
Sure.
One is about the stakeholder approach.
Yes.
Maybe you always talk about that whatever you are doing, whether it's an employee or your company or your student, why this so much focus on the stakeholder growth rather than only one specific segment? You always talk about that.
Yeah, see, my belief is ultimately all of us exist to serve others. That's my belief. It's a very sad and miserable existence if we feel all our life's energy is devoted to helping us. It's a pretty waste of a life. And I think that extends everywhere. At home, we do what we do for our families. When we enter the workplace, we do what we do for our employees, for our customers, for our stakeholders. And I believe our personal success needs to be an outcome of that. If you do a good job of serving others, you will be rewarded. Sometimes you won't, but at least you're doing the right thing. So that's kind of what I believe is in any setting, I don't start with who am I leading. You actually lead no one, right? You may think you lead someone, and if you just flash your business card or your designation, people may comply because they have to, but you're never going to get engagement, you're never going to get any real belief in what you're saying. I think ultimately you lead by serving. That's kind of how I approach life in general and certainly leadership.
Wonderful, wonderful. So if you have to leave one message with the student which they remember for the next 10 years,
Yeah.
or maybe what you would want, what kind of qualities you would want when you hire them, when you grow them, when you get some work done from them, what is the one single message you would want to give them?
No, I guess the biggest message I would give all of you is find out what uniquely brings you joy. Don't do stuff because it's cool to do, it's popular to do, my friend did it, I think that company is good. That's never going to keep you going for the long haul. Find, like the joy I found. I was just heat sealing packets of food and going home. That brought me joy. And over time, at that time, I never thought this much. Now, with a few more gray hair, I look back and say, this is what I found joy in, is working on tangible things that consumers use. For you, it may be something completely different. All of us are different, but ask yourself, what is it that you really enjoy doing, which is authentic to you? Build on it, become the best you can at it. That's what I would say. The worst thing you can do is follow labels, follow tags, follow what others are doing, follow what you think you should be doing. Because long term, your success, who knows what success is, but long term you'll be contented when you're really being authentic and doing things that make sense to you.
Great. I think we are having a feast of leadership.
Yeah.
So a little small rapid fire and then we would open
Sure.
up for Q&A. So karate or writing, which helps you to de-stress faster?
De-stress. Faster. Writing. Because writing I can do by myself.
Yeah, I thought so. One corporate buzzword you wish would disappear.
All of them?
Good one. Plant-based product, fad or future?
I would say future, provided it adds real value versus just being a tag.
Okay, great. Your favorite snack from the McCain food?
Smiles.
Nice.
Because my son likes it, right?
Okay. And your comfort food is the same? Or?
My comfort food since childhood. I try and be a bit healthy, but I have a real sweet tooth is gajar ka halwa.
Gajar
That
ka
is my
halwa.
comfort food.
I love that.
That is my go-to comfort food.
Great. Most underrated skill for corporate leaders?
Humility. You don't always have to know everything or be important.
Very good. One advice to your younger self?
To my
Younger self?
youngest, be patient.
Be patient. And so you got so many awards. So most proud of which award or recognition you have?
None of them. I'm most proud when my wife or son say I've done something right.
Yeah. Family first.
Yeah.
So you are true to your values. Good one. Your fitness mantra?
Do a little bit every day.
Yes. And I think you lost weight. You told the story. But anyway. Writer versus author. You spoke about this in one of the videos. So just tell us for the audience.
Yeah, so see, the big difference is anyone can be a writer. Right? All of us biologically can write. That's not a big deal, right? The difference is when you become an author, you're not writing for yourself. You're writing for someone else. And then just like we talked about customers or consumers, the transition from being a writer to an author is you are writing for someone. Who are you writing for? What works for them? What doesn't work for them? That's the big shift in mindset that happens.
Yeah. And you get paid.
And you get paid. Even if you don't get paid,
Yeah.
no, but to be honest, the biggest reward is not the payment. The biggest reward is when you meet someone, you hear, like my first book was published when I was in second year of college. So this was back in 1992. I still come across people, this was a book on economic history. I still come across people saying, oh, I passed out 7 years ago and I read your book in college. It's the connection you make with people. And the biggest reward is there was something in your mind which you put on paper, and through that you've made a connection with somebody whom you might never ever meet. That's the biggest.
That's great. Yeah. So last, business leader by day and author by night.
Yeah.
That is what you write on LinkedIn. So when do you sleep?
When do I sleep? At night, I sleep very well. I guess the thing is,
Basically, your time management tip.
No, the
like
hidden
how you do
secret
so much.
the hidden secret on this is actually asking all the things I don't do. So on the face of it, I lead a very boring life. Okay, it sounds like you do so much. I actually do very little. I
Many
wake up
of
early.
us would love to have that
Yeah,
boring life.
I
Yeah.
wake up early in the morning,
Okay.
go to the gym with my son. He goes off to school. When I'm writing, write maybe 30 minutes a day, work, do the best I can for people at work. Evenings and weekends are with family. Implicit in that is a lot of things I don't do. I don't party, I don't drink, I don't like networking. So there's a lot of stuff I don't do. So, ultimately all of us have 24 hours. And I'm not saying I'm doing anything right or wrong, but I think ultimately it just comes down to your priorities and how you can focus on them. So like with any optimization problem where you have finite resources and you're maximizing something, figure out what you're maximizing.
But great advice and small size like your fries. Very crispy, wanting us more. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank
And
you.
let's have some questions now.
So I wanted to ask you about your writing. So you said that when you are writing for someone, you become an author. But while writing, you actually
Sure. No, great question, Somnath. Somnath, right? Hi, hi. No, it's a great question. See, I think it's something, to be honest, you have to keep iterating through, because the starting point as an author, it's not that you write something and then you hope it works for someone. The starting point, ideally, not that it always works like this, right? Sometimes you'll just get an idea in your mind and you'll start working on something. In an ideal world, you start with almost a trifecta of, look, is there something I'm passionate about that makes sense to me? Is this going to be of use to somebody? Do I feel this is going to help somebody in some way? And the third thing is, do I have something interesting, unique to say about it, whether it's fiction or non-fiction? So ideally, you start with some hypotheses. That, okay, this is the need gap or an issue or something I want to talk about. So that's where you start. So usually as an author, it's counterproductive to only start with, I'm passionate about this, I'll write, because then you have a high risk of you're writing something but nobody really cares about it. The other thing which I've found really helpful is along the way. It's actually no different from product development and marketing, right? It sounds chalk and cheese. How do you keep getting feedback? That's the best way of doing it. And the best way of getting feedback is just having conversations. So chat with a friend. A lot of my early ideas, I'll bounce off my wife, chat with a couple of friends. Hey, I'm working on this. This is what I'm thinking of. So you get that, because otherwise as an author, it's tempting but very dangerous to be in your own echo chamber, which is, I am doing something I am passionate about it. So, and often you'll realize that what you are thinking doesn't actually make sense to people. And then you need to have the humility to say, look, how do I balance being authentic, have something I'm passionate about, but be open to feedback? So that's something which I try and do.
Yes.
Hello, Mr. Dhar. My name is Chirag. I am actually a second year student here. And my question is actually about McCain, and generally you mentioned about customer insight. And essentially frozen foods directly links to convenience that the customer wants. Is there any customer insight that either you have already noticed a kind of a shift or something that you see coming in that can lead to some kind of a category switch, or diving into something like quick commerce or any other different marketplaces that exist?
Oh, Chirag, that's a very good question. See, the big thing which I love about the consumer products business and marketing is ultimately it's about not a category, not a product. So what I'm going to tell you is not specific to frozen. It's fundamentally about what's happening in people's lives, what's happening in society. So if I look at a few broad trends that are happening, which influence every brand and different brands in different ways. One is India's got an overwhelmingly young population. Almost 30% of our population is below the age of 20. Youth brings with it its own dynamics. Desire for change, desire for new things, and then you have a generation growing up who are digital natives. That brings with it its own dynamic in terms of trends, how trends move from one sector to another. So if you look at the world of snacking, the hottest flavor trend over the last few years has been, guess what? Can you guess? Korean. And that did not come because people sat down and blind tasted products and said, I like Korean. That came from K-pop and Korean dramas. So young population, a generation of digital natives growing up has its own dynamic on what that means for different categories. There's global recession of trends, desire for innovation, increasing focus on awareness of what are we using, why are we using it, a far higher desire for purpose-led brands and companies. The other thing that's happening beyond this is fundamentally the structure of our society is evolving. A couple of generations ago, most families were joint families to a large extent. You have increasing nuclearization, you have increasing numbers of young professionals living alone or in small families. That's led to its own trend on convenience, what people want, when people want. The final mega trend, I think, that's shaping how many categories are consumed is the disruptor that technology is providing. And it's not just a means of shopping. It's how we consume content, how we consume entertainment, how we engage with brands. So OTT didn't exist a few years ago. So there's a whole consumption occasion which has opened up, which didn't even exist, which is I'll come home from work or from college, I'll turn on Netflix or JioHotstar, I'll watch a movie and then I want something to eat. That did not exist. So quick commerce did not exist. So that's where I think you have a young population growing up as digital natives, changing structure of our society, and the disruption that digital is bringing. I think all of this puts together has huge implications for brands. And it's then really speaks to how do you tap into what those emerging trends are, how do you make yourself accessible and relevant, where your consumers are most receptive. So those are, I think, the big trends which impacts every brand. Yeah, thank you.
Who's next? Yeah, I think somebody should keep track who's.
Hello, sir. Really, we all are grateful that you took our time and address all of us. So basically, I am also very much interested in marketing. So this FMCG sector always intrigues me. So now with like I don't know if it's the government dynamics or what, but a lot of new companies are now entering Indian market. So I just wanted to know what's the process like, or not process, but how the government is, what's the role of government in this and how they are affecting, because now the whole environment is changing. And also, sir, if you could just put some light in what your views are regarding the tariff policies that are now changing and how it would affect the Indian market also. That
Can I have your name, please?
I'm Ishika.
I'm sorry?
Ishika.
Ishika. So Ishika, good question. Is somebody interested in marketing, the first piece of advice I'd have for you is be curious about what's happening in the world around you, which I think you are, which is great, because that's the core of marketing, right? What's happening in people's lives. Now, the interesting thing is when you ask the role of the government, can I ask you a question back, if that's okay?
Yes, sure.
What do you think the role of the government should be?
So basically, on the internal level, what I have read, it would be like what we talk about, the ease of doing business index and all these things that are affecting on the international domestic Indian level, only domestic. Regarding the international level, I am not aware of
No,
it.
and that's absolutely fine. Don't worry. I think the interesting thing is these are not new phenomenon. I mean, if you go back and read the Arthashastra, which was written whenever 4th century BC, that's actually got some really great insights on the role the government can play. And if you fast forward a few centuries and you read about what Adam Smith talked about the role of the government and the invisible hand, fundamentally a truth that has existed for millennia is that for any industry or business or sector to develop, I think the government has to be an integral part of the ecosystem. And I think the government plays fundamentally two roles. One is a regulator, one is an enabler. You need them to play both roles. So back to the Arthashastra, there was a good mix of free enterprise, but there were some things where the government was expected to play a role. And I think those same two roles exist. So when you think about the consumer product sector, I think the government plays a really, really important role in ensuring certain standards, regulations to really help protect the interests of consumers. At the same time, the government also plays a big role as an enabler, as you said, in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of attracting investment. And I think on both counts, we have made, if you take the long sweep, because let's see, the tempting thing on anything like this is look at what's happening this year versus last year, but sometimes really the impact of these you see over decades. So if you think about when I was growing up in college, India was a very different place. Far more difficult to do business, for new companies to enter, new brands to enter. So if you take that long sweep with the process of liberalization, I think we have moved a lot in the right direction. Becoming much more globally integrated, taking the right steps in making India a destination for manufacturing. So I think the government's playing a very positive and powerful role there, but I think those are the two roles the government plays. Now, your second question, we could talk for hours and hours, tariffs, because that's something happening in the world around us. Maybe we'll park that for some other time.
Every day there is something happening. So, yes. Can we take the next question?
Hello, my name is Snehal. I am from Alumni Committee. One of the alum has a question named Sharath Nambia. The question is, McCain is the frozen potato snack category. Is it a strategic decision not to diversify into frozen foods, especially in the non-veg category?
Yeah, so I guess on that, versus talking about the specific of the category, what I'll say is, see, ultimately, every brand, and just like every human being, is successful when they are rooted in who they are. Okay, so uh, I'll tell you a story about McCain as a company. We are not a frozen foods company or a fries company. Fundamentally, McCain started with a family of potato farmers in a very small town in Canada. That's what the roots of the company are. So that's over time, if you think of it in terms of more corporate language, that is our core competence. That's what we know how to do better than anyone else. That's why in our whole activity system, we don't think of ourselves as starting as manufacturers. I mean, my biggest learning curve over the last year has been the important and critical role farmers or growers play in our ecosystem and how do we work with them. So that's kind of who we are. So I'm not saying non-veg is good or bad and other companies should or shouldn't. It's not core to who McCain is as a company. And that's, I think, how most brands are built. Nike would not launch a soft drink. They are a brand which has something at its core which they do incredibly well. Apple is not going to launch a shampoo. Because at the core, they are about certain things. And I think for every brand, it's ultimately about realizing who you are, what you do well, what you think you can do better than others, and then build off it.
Hello, sir. Good evening. Thank you for joining with us today. I'm Matali, and my question is that from growing up at different places to growing up with the leading companies, how did you cope up with the setbacks and challenges?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess I wish I had a very theoretical answer, but I think over time, if I relate back to karate, you don't learn karate by practicing things by yourself. You learn it best the first time you're kicked in the face. Right? And that's when you actually learn. And that's the spirit you need to take life in, is you are going to learn, become stronger, get better at what you do by practicing your craft, by facing setbacks. That's so a lot of how you talk of setbacks, I actually relate back to my experience learning karate. That, as they say, you will learn and what you become tougher and stronger. Because the easy thing to do is hit. The tough thing to do is get hit, and then get back up and keep going. And that's how I internalize it. Is see and the second part is take away any pretension or hope you have that you're always going to be successful. None of us is. All of us fail, all of us make mistakes, all of us have strokes of bad luck. Accept that. There is great liberation in accepting that, because sometimes what happens is we put pressure on ourselves. Why have I failed? Face it, you failed, and everyone fails, and you've made a mistake. That's okay. Now, what do I learn from it? How do I get better, and how do I move on? I think those are the two things. Is people have a fear of failing, and people sometimes take it as unnatural to fail, or being a failure is a big mark of shame. All of us do it. Sometimes people don't want to talk about it. I think just that's kind of how I deal with it.
Wonderful. I think that's very, very important. How you respond to failure, how you react to failure. I think that's a stepping stone. Or yeah, who else?
So, good evening, sir. So my question is, currently we can see there is a protein wave going in India, right? From Amul to Godrej Yummies, all are entering in that market. So how big organizations like McCain address that situation, or how they think? And my second question is, we talked about creating our own brand image. So can you share more thoughts on that?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll start with the second question first. Your name, please?
Kaushal.
Kaushal. So I'll start with the second question first. I would say my biggest advice on creating your own brand is don't start by worrying about your own brand. Because again, if you think of why are strong brands built? Strong brands are built because they're meeting someone's needs. So I'd say the starting point of building a stronger brand for yourself is saying, look, whose needs do I need to meet? How do I meet their needs better? Who am I as a person where I can uniquely meet others' needs? Those are the questions to ask. So I think that's how the best brands are built. Best brands are, I would say the misconception about personal branding is it's all about projecting yourself, it's about being extroverted, it's about networking. No, it's not. It's not. The most impactful people, the people you will remember, the people who will actually make a difference to your lives,
are people who may not actually do any of that, but they genuinely are there to serve you, help you in some way. So that's, I think, the biggest advice I'd give you. Start by asking those questions. Who am I serving? How can I better serve them? Who am I at my core? What am I passionate about? How do I then bring that to how I interact with others? Over time, you will build a brand. That's my biggest advice. The first question you asked about, how do companies react to this? I'd say the first thing I would say is the most successful brands actually don't get built by following any wave. It comes back to understanding what's the underlying consumer behavior or insight that may be manifesting into a certain expressed behavior, which may be a wave. Because if you chase a wave, you're always chasing something that's happening now. And what you're mentioning is there are some mega trends. Like if I talked about some of the things I talked about, there is increasing consciousness and awareness of health and wellness, which is coming from a young population, which is much more digitally aware, which is aware of trends around the world. So that is definitely a big part of it. And I think for every brand, what's important is to understand how do I best lead my brand in that space by best meeting my consumers' needs. Not by following a wave, because ultimately every brand may have a slightly different way of tapping into it. That's what I would say.
So maybe last one or two questions. Yeah. So we'll take one or two student and then maybe professor.
As the author, we write any novels or books by a human-centered approach. But AI is also doing the same thing in this fraction of seconds, where a writer takes 1 or 2 years to write the same thing. So what are your thoughts on that?
Your name? Rajwa.
So you're questioning the existence of a writer.
No, absolutely. See, I think that's there's a philosophical answer to it, but I'll say, where I see AI helping as a writer is AI can help really short-circuit the research process, because it gives you access to information really fast, which otherwise, if you think a generation ago, you've not seen that world where you used to go to libraries and find different books, then came the internet, AI just short-circuits that. So I think AI can be an immense ally to writing. Now, the thing about when you mention AI can write, see, the thing is, if all you are doing is conveying existing information, of course, AI can substitute a writer. But ultimately, as a writer, if that's the only value you're adding, you're not actually writing anything of use. Because the biggest value any writer brings to the table is what's here and what's here. No machine learning algorithm picks that up. Machine learning algorithms are picking up data sets that are either in a closed machine learning loop which somebody's created, or it's scouring the internet. So it is picking up existing information that exists. The best writing is stuff that is creating stuff that does not exist. So if you think of, J.R.R. Tolkien, one of my favorite authors in your generation, I guess, Game of Thrones, that didn't exist anyway. They created it. And in creating it, they made a new reality. So the best writing in fiction is you're creating new realities, which AI will find very difficult to do, because fundamentally it's picking up information that exists. The second thing when it comes to the world of non-fiction is the insight that human experience brings you. The storytelling that human experience brings you, AI is not going to be able to pick. That's not to say AI is bad, never use it. It's a wonderful research tool. It's a wonderful way of short-circuiting the information search process. But I think till humans are going to be inspired by stories, are going to be inspired by seeing new things brought to life, the writers will always have a place.
And the biographies, autobiographies, because somebody is narrating their experiences, what AI will do. So अभी है, जिंदा है अभी writer. प्रोफेसर साहब, एक प्रोफेसर साहब का क्वेश्चन लेते हैं. One more, okay. चलो.
Am I audible at the back? Thank you. So couple of questions, and half of that you have already answered. You mentioned about Socratic question, and for every Socratic question there is a AI generated answer. As a future employer, how would you look at it? That is question number one. And question number two is when student approaches, they are aspired to be a marketer. And when we say that they have to do sales, they find the word sale as a nightmarish. So how do you place sales in this defined context?
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. See, this whole distinction between marketing and sales is something somebody somewhere made in a boardroom and in textbooks. In reality, there is no difference. Ultimately, as a marketer, your job is to serve the consumer. The consumer does not exist for the brand without buying the brand where the brand is sold. So ultimately, in my mind, there is no difference between the two. If somebody says, oh, I'm a marketer, I don't know anything about sales, you probably just spout a few buzzwords sitting in a nice room. You probably actually know nothing about marketing. And if somebody says, oh, I'm a salesperson, that's one thing, you probably are a very poor salesperson. Because ultimately, if you know nothing about the first moment of truth and how to influence shoppers, you're probably not going to be very successful in sales. So I think to build a long and successful career in the consumer products industry, there are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I think you have solved a big problem by telling this, because this question we again and again get.
Yeah.
कि sales नहीं करना है, marketing करना है या marketing नहीं करना है.
If you say marketing करना है ना, people will say यार ज्ञान सुनने के लिए तो किसी को नहीं रखना ना. I mean, ultimately, your strategies have to be built on insight, and insight seems like a really fancy word. Insight is born out of experience. That's the only place insight. I'll tell you a story, right? When I began my career, my first assignment was assistant brand manager on hair care. So I was a 21, 22-year-old guy who had never been to a fancy salon in my life, and I was expected to market shampoos to high hair involved women with long hair. And you know, for me, the way I thought of it is, look, I don't want to make this only something I'm looking at slide decks and research data. So for several months after work, I used to wear a cap with a long wig of hair attached. And people used to think I was mad, but I said, look, otherwise I'm a hypocrite. I'm supposedly trying to serve a consumer with long hair and I have no idea. So I said, let me just understand, what does it feel like to wake up when you have long hair, and then tangled hair and ease of combing is not just something I read on a piece of paper. I know what it feels like. That's what sales does for you. You can say, oh, my packaging will stand out. Well, go to that store and see what it looks like in that sea of other packs and you'll understand. So I would say that is something which has been time immemorial, even when I was in campus. And over time, you'll realize that the two are two sides of the same coin. You will be more successful in either field once you've experienced the other. Yes, sir.
Yeah, last question. I think he has to leave.
Yeah. So I'm really thrilled to find fellow buff of thrillers and economic history, which is Venn diagram wise the most unlikely combo possible. So what would you recommend as one thriller that all of us should read, and what's one book on economic history all of us should read?
Interesting. See, thrillers, I'll tell you, the thrillers I love reading actually are historical thrillers, which is actually the two come together. History and thrillers come together. So I love Bernard Cornwell, I love Con Eagledon. So Con Eagledon's got a whole series about Caesar, a whole series about Genghis Khan. I find it fascinating because you're learning about history, but in a fictional way. So those are the kind of books I read in my spare time. On economic history, there's a lot of great books. Recently, actually and some of them you might say are not economic history books, but actually they teach you a lot about the world. So there's this one author I really love is William Dalrymple, because he teaches a lot about what made the world tick. Another author I really love is Shashi Tharoor. He teaches a lot about what makes the world tick. So, he had this recent book about the colonial impact on India. William Dalrymple was fascinating because one of his ancestors was actually in the East India Company in the Black Hole of Calcutta. So you get a lot of personal resonance when he wrote about the East India Company. So those are a couple of books which on the face of it are economic history, but ultimately, so if you're a fan of the subject, economic history is about society, it's about people, it's about how they've evolved. So those are the kind of books I enjoy reading.
I think for want of time, we can't take more questions. So thank you, Mainak. Thank you for your insights, stories. I think they'll have to do some work.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful session. On behalf of KJSIM Institute of Management, I would now like to invite Professor Priya Kataria to please come up on the stage and express her gratitude towards our guest.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a privilege to read the kind words that our students have put together. And allow me to read this with a little bit of rhythm. Hope that stays with all of us. To you, sir, in places where brands are born, in places where dreams grow, your path had a steady glow. 28 years of leading with care, new ideas you took everywhere. From Procter & Gamble to McCain's strong name, each step forward was never the same. Innovation guides people inspire, breaking old limits to reach higher. A CEO, mentor, author admired, 20 books written, readers inspired, 500,000 copies in many hands, stories that travel to distant lands. Through AI and books, your wisdom flows, blending past values with what tomorrow knows. Karate's discipline shapes your way, humility and learning every day. Across APAC, the Gulf, and Africa's ground, leading with courage is always found. Purpose and passion light your way through, inspiring many and staying true. Thank you so much for being here.
You guys are asking me questions about being writers. You guys have some really talented poets in your midst. Thank you so much.
I'd now request Ashwati to come forward with the mug, which we would like you, sir, to sign as a memento for us.
I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to Mr. Mainak Dhar for gracing us. Your presence here has been both inspiring and invaluable. I would like to thank Raman sir, who has always been supportive of all student activities in spite of his hectic schedule. Thank you, sir, for your presence. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to our faculty head, Mr. Arun Tukral, for his invaluable contribution to the second lecture of the third season of Careers and Conversations. Your insights have made this event truly remarkable, sir. Additionally, I would like to thank Arvind sir, Krupa ma'am, Rohit sir, Priya ma'am, Meenal ma'am, the technical team, and the support staff for ensuring the success of this event with their commendable efforts. Furthermore, I want to acknowledge the continuous support of the Marcom NPR team and the Marcom NPR committee and the alumni committee. To everyone present here, student and faculty, we extend our thanks for joining us for this informative session and being such a great audience. We will now stop the live stream. We would now